If you see a movie with Nicolas Cage in it, it's either gonna be the best movie you've seen in a while, or the absolute worst. He dominates the opposite ends of that spectrum. And I'm still deciding which category Willie's Wonderland falls into. I mean, because it's perfectly, majestically stupid and but it's fun. Stupid movies can be fun, but if animatronics creep you the hell out, then you're in for a very fun ride. At least they're not puppets, right? Puppets are disgusting. Or porcelain dolls. And if I sound like a smoker, it's because I'm on week 6 of pneumonia. Week 6! And I've been coughing so hard that I'm pretty much just tearing my throat apart at this point. So we have the smoker voice today. For Willie's Wonderland, as I stated, Nick Cage is the main actor. And you know, for better or for worse, he fits this role so well. But the thing is, he doesn't say a word the entire movie. His character's like mute, but it's never brought up or spoken about or addressed at all, really. But it kind of works, and he pulls it off well, okay? So, Willie's Wonderland, ooh, it opens with Nick Cage in a really nice car, speeding down this deserted road, going hella speeding. Anyway, because he's speeding, he doesn't have time to stop when he comes across road spikes that obliterate all 4 of his tires. Heaven only knows why there's police road spikes in the road, but Nick Cage found them. And with his 4 tires blown to smithereens, he comes to a careening stop, and then, you know, as you do in this type of situation, Nick goes to his trunk, pulls out a soda, and pops open a cold one. For the most part, it seems like he's in the middle of nowhere, so he kind of just gets out and stands by his car and just stares off into the distance. Nick Cage does a lot of staring in this movie. His acting is in his staring. But lo and behold, some trucker guy or a tow truck guy comes by and picks Nick Cage up, and the silent mute Nick Cage who doesn't explain anything. But I guess if you see 4 pop tires, you don't need an explanation. You don't need words. So the tow guy does what the tow guy does best and tows Nick's car and gives Nick a ride in the passenger seat back. But once the tow guy named Jed Love, I believe, once he brings Nick back to his car shop in the town that's close to the desolate road, he surveys the damage to the tires and tells Nick, yeah, it's gonna be around $1,000 to get 4 new tires, plus a $200 tow fee. And Nick just casually pulls out his wallet and gets his card out, but the guy's like, no, cash only, no plastic, Except their ATM machine, of course, is not working, so he's like, well, this is quite a pickle, isn't it? Jed even says, ain't that a dilly of a pickle? Never heard that one before, but going in the vault. So Jed says, you know, since you don't have cash, you could, you know, work it off. How about that? And Nick just silently nods like, Then it cuts to a scene of a girl with a gasoline can trying to burn down a building called Willie's Wonderland, except she's caught in the act by the sheriff and stopped in her tracks. Before the sheriff can haul the girl away to wherever, Nick and Jed pull up in that tow truck, and as soon as Jed pulls up, he's chatting the sheriff's ear off, and then, you know, Nick, silent in the passenger seat, just has this intense stare with the girl. Like, they have to stare off. And the sheriff named Sheriff Lund, she detains the girl and takes her back to this podunk-looking little house, and handcuffs her inside next to a bucket and a bag of chips, and then says, stay here, I'll be back tomorrow. And, you know, the girl's obviously not too happy about this. I mean, what more can you ask for? There's a bucket there and a bag of chips. La vida loca. After the sheriff and the girl have left, Jed takes Nick over to someone named Tex McAdoo, who is the owner of the building / past birthday attraction, Willie's Wonderland, that the girl was trying to burn down. Except, like I said, past attraction because it's been closed for many years, and very much looks the part. Jed explains the situation to Tex, and Tex says to Nick, you know, I'll pay for all 4 of your tires if you stay here overnight and get this place up and running, or like cleaned out and spick and span, because Tex has hopes of reopening the attraction or venue, the birthday place. And you know what? Nick agrees, because he ain't got cash. Plus, I think I'd rather do that than spend $1,000 on tires anyway. So Tex takes Nick inside, shows him around, shows him the cleaning equipment and the janitorial stuff, the janitor's closet, and, you know, the mayhem inside, the havoc. It's just very old and run down, and it's been abandoned for quite a few years because there were quite a few lawsuits that prompted it to close. And when Tex is showing Nick around, Nick sees the state of all the old, broken down, dilapidated looking, withered animatronics. And they're creepy as hell. Ooh, animatronics gross me out, sure, but I mean, puppets are worse, and, you know, porcelain dolls. Can feel him watching me. But animatronics have a place of hate in my heart as well. And there are 8 animatronics that, you know, used to perform back in the party days when the place was up and running and kids were everywhere, ew. And they all have individual names. Willie Weasel's the main one, hence why it's called Willie's Wonderland. Then there's Artie Alligator, Canamy Chameleon, Canamy? I can't read my handwriting. Canamy Chameleon, Ozzy Ostrich, Tito Turtle, Nightly Night, Gus Gorilla, and Siren Sarah. and they're all as repulsive and haunted looking as the next. Except the whole time, Tex and Jed, Tex being the owner and Jed being the tow truck guy, they're shady as hell, and they keep throwing each other these shady looks, like, there's something going on, okay? I smell a rat, or a weasel. Shadiness Exhibit A. After Nick agrees to stay overnight and clean the place, Tex leaves, but not before he locks Nick in this building. He locks the door behind him and traps him inside for the night. And if the whole situation wasn't suspicious enough already, after Tex goes back outside, he says to Jed, like, oh, I hate the sound of a grown man screaming. I don't want to hear it. So what is going to happen to Nick in there? That's what we're going to find out. So it jumps back to the girl who's being handcuffed inside that little podunk house. Her friend group comes and rescues her and frees her, and she says to them, like, I saw that they found another newcomer, a stranger to the town. He's probably already locked in Willie's Wonderland, because apparently this has happened before. And quite a few times. And I hate to be that person. No, nah, I don't. I cannot stand bad acting. Oh my gosh! You can have the best movie, the best plot, the best story, the best director, but if the actors are crap...
Yeah, burn, baby, burn!
...then the whole movie's gonna be a giant crap fest, okay? I mean, Nick Cage in general's a decent actor, right? I mean, he doesn't talk the whole movie, so we don't have to worry about him here. But the teenagers... Did they find these kids off the street? What the hell? It feels like the people they cast for the teenagers have never acted a day in their life, because hell. So that was a struggle to get through the entire movie. Anyway, back in Willie's Wonderland, the old abandoned kid birthday venue place. I don't know what you call those places. It's like Chuck E. Cheese on crack, or the haunted Chuck E. Cheese. Even though Chuck E. Cheese himself looks a little bit haunted to me. I think I only went to Chuck E. Cheese once as a kid because, I was poor. But even then, I'm like, kids like it here? Are the rats not creeping anyone out? Like the animatronic rats? Not to mention the ones that are probably scurrying around that nasty place, but ew. But apparently Nick does not care about the creepy animatronics because he immediately gets to work. Like, he means business. The entire movie, he means business. Despite the obviously suspicious circumstances, he immediately gets cleaning, and he sets a schedule, a very tight, strict schedule that he sticks to. He sets his watch so that he has a set amount of time to clean, and then to take a break. And as soon as that watch timer goes off for his break, he drops everything, all his cleaning supplies, immediately heads over to the fridge in the break room, and I forgot to mention that he indeed did bring his sodas with him, because why not? So like clockwork, every break, he goes to the break room, drinks a soda, throws it in the trash, and gets back to work. Although a couple breaks in, he discovers a pinball machine, and he incorporates that into his break schedule. And as Nick is going around this creepy old building cleaning, completely unfazed, we kind of see the animatronics shifting and moving in the background, but he doesn't notice. But even if he did notice, I feel like he would not care. He is that out of it. He does not care. He is so nonchalant about everything. He just got that one-track mind. Clean his dump up and he can get back on the road in the morning. And while he's mopping in the main room, Ozzy the ostrich, who is now sentient, comes up to him and attacks him, and, Nick Cage fights back. There's a brutal battle between them, but Nick ends up winning, and he ends up tearing the mechanical spine out of the ostrich's neck. His war scar is a little cut on his cheek, and he just gets some duct tape, slaps it on, and without blinking an eye, goes straight back to cleaning. Without even questioning what the hell just happened, that he was attacked by an animatronic, he just goes back to cleaning. One-track mind. And it shows that the sheriff, who is shady as well, everyone involved is so shady. Everyone in this whole town. Maybe besides the teenagers who want to help. But the sheriff is back at the sheriff's office, and she hired backup, despite it being a dead night. And even the backup is confused why he's there. But she knows something might go down tonight. Back at Willie's, Nick is in the bathroom cleaning off all the graffiti off the walls and mirrors. And there's a lot. And after a sick cleaning montage of Nick Cage scrubbing down the whole bathroom, which probably would have done numbers on TikTok, he hears something talking to him from one of the stalls, taunting him and leering him, and as he pushes open each stall, it's playing a game of hot or cold with him. And as he gets closer to the last stall, the voice says, getting warmer, you're as hot as a pancake and just as yummy. That's the thing, there's so many dumb one-liners in this movie that just, it's perfect. Perfect. But lo and behold, the gorilla animatronic bursts out of the stall, attacks Nick. Nick ends up sticking a plunger to its face, and pushing it back and beating it up and eventually defeating it because he's Nick Cage. He's Nick Cage. Did you really expect the gorilla to win here? But then, like the last time, he casually tapes up his injuries. Or maybe he's actually making himself some body armor for the next attacks that he's casually anticipating. Then, with pretty much no expression at all or no reaction, goes right back to cleaning, and his brake alarm goes off, so he gets a soda and then is casually just cleaning his nails in the break room. Then the friend group of fantastic actors arrive outside Willie's Wonderland, and Nick Cage is locked in, so they have to figure out a way to get in. But the main girl, whose name is Liv, who was the one who was trying to burn the building in the beginning, her acting is no better though. Judgments aside, Liv decides that she'll go in on her lonesome while her friends stay outside and douse the building in gasoline in preparation for the eventual burning, hopefully after they get Nick out. Although a couple of her friends were kind of down to burn it with him in it. Before she actually tries to find a way in, Liv looks in through the boarded window and makes eye contact with Nick Cage and tries to tell him, like, you're in danger, you need to get out of there, you did this and this and this. And he just kind of looks at her and walks away and goes back to cleaning. He's determined to get that place clean. He does not care about chit-chat or small talk. I wish I had a coworker like him. So Liv makes her way inside through the air vents, which, in movies, the air vents are always massive. I don't think they're that big normally. Maybe in an industrial building, though. Anyway, she makes her way inside and escapes the wrath of a few of the animatronics, which she knows come to life, because she's seemingly lived in this town for a while. Hence why she was trying to burn down the building in the beginning. She knows how evil it is. And once she's inside, she's able to find Nick and talk to him face to face. But he is just as uncaring. He is just as passive. While she's trying to warn him about how evil this place is and that he's a human sacrifice pretty much for the animatronics, he just turns around and leaves the room and goes back to cleaning while she's mid-sentence. I mean, you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, even if they're Nick Cage. Meanwhile, her friends outside, for some reason, make their way up to the roof, maybe trying to figure out a way to get her out eventually, but then they're kind of brawling over something, and the roof collapses underneath them, and they all fall inside the building. Right into the ball pit, actually, so lucky for them. But now everyone is inside Willie's Wonderland, and now they're kind of all stuck together. And when the group meets Nick Cage, he's so uninterested, he does not care. His nonchalance and stoicism is actually so funny. I think it's like the cherry on top of this movie.
Oh, that's badass.
Now that everyone's in the same room together, Liv continues on where I guess Nick cut her off when he left earlier, and she explains that Willie's Wonderland was created and owned by a guy who turned out to be a prolific serial killer. Because of course. And he would hire pretty much equally evil people to be his crew members, and when the venue was busy and hopping and there were a bunch of families there, they would take families to like the back rooms, these private areas, and then kill them all, I guess for the hell of it. But when enough people go missing from the same place, it gets a little suspicious. So apparently, years back when this was all happening, all going down, the police did a massive raid on the building, but by the time they got there, the main guy and all his evil subordinates had done like a mass group suicide. Some sort of satanic suicide ritual where their spirits were then transferred over to the animatronics so they can live on and continue their evil. So the place was subsequently shut down for many years, but many decades later, Tex McAdoo got hold of the place and reopened it, and a bunch of the evil stuff continued, but through the animatronics. They were malfunctioning and biting kids and saying random creepy awful stuff. So he discovered that the animatronics were infested with malevolent spirits, so to appease them and to keep the rest of the town safe, Tex and the sheriff and a couple others in town offered to bring in the occasional human sacrifice for the animatronics to eat and do what they will with, as long as they left the rest of the town alone. So that's what Nick is. He is a human sacrifice, except a human sacrifice who could not care less about that. So now that Nick, Liv, and the whole friend group are now locked and trapped inside this evil building with all these evil animatronics, the ones haunted by the malevolent cult spirits, the animatronics start attacking and killing the friends and picking them off one by one, while Nick is continuing to go around in his cleaning schedule. Like, he has not deviated from that and will not, come hell or high water. So all throughout the building and other rooms, while the friends are getting attacked and some killed, he's just going about mopping and wiping down the walls and sweeping and dusting and, of course, taking his break when his watch beeps. Cannot miss that. And still, despite everything that's going on in the building, he continues on with his breaks as normal, cracking open a soda and then playing around with pinball. One of the friends, who was hidden away and not died yet, obviously, he calls the sheriff, and when the sheriff picks up the phone and hears that, like, help, we're in Willie's Wonderland, she immediately hangs up. She's like, they made their bed. They should not have gone in there. They know how evil it is. They should have let sleeping dogs lie, let Nick get eaten and be the sacrifice. They should have put the blinders on like everyone else in the town. Yeah, they're bad for trying to help him. Okay. But then the friend, Chris, calls again and says, Liv is in here too. And that's when the sheriff cares, because apparently the sheriff is the parental guardian to Liv. So she's like, crap, now I have to help. Damn it. So her and the backup officer, who doesn't know why he's there, they head down to Willie's. After an intense pinball round, and after his watch beeps the end of his break, Nick hears someone scream somewhere out in the restaurant, so then he decides to help, since his break is technically over, but only after his break is over, not a second before does he help. He goes back into the main area and starts casually vanquishing and battling the animatronics and kills quite a few of them because, he's badass Nick Cage, what can I say? So Nick is wailing on and beating up all the animatronics, but quite a few of the friend group is already killed off by now. Pretty much most of them. The people alive at this point are only Nick, Liv, and maybe one other friend. Except as the sheriff and her backup guy are driving over, she explains to him, like, the dark history of Willie's Wonderland, because he's from out of town, I think, from another station, another precinct, and he has no idea. But she also explains to him that Liv is the product of this whole human sacrifice thing, because apparently it was a family of 3, 2 parents and a daughter, who had found their way into this horrible town, and, you know, subsequently had their tires destroyed by those zigzags, as they call them, or the road spikes, and, you know, following the same devious course, they were offered a free tire fix if they stayed overnight and cleaned the Willie's Wonderland. So the parents and the little girl, like, they included the little girl in that. Anyway, so the 3 of them were locked in, and this, you know, of course, was years and years back. I guess this tradition's been going on a while, but the parents ended up dying, and Liv didn't escape, but she hid. Then the sheriff found her the next morning, so she kind of just took her in as a daughter, I guess. Back to Willie's Wonderland, present day. Nick and Liv are getting ready to fight the chameleon animatronic, and they got, you know, their fist up and everything. But then Nick's break timer goes off. So he's like, oh. He hands Liv the knife he has, and then leaves the room, and leaves her to fight the lizard on her own. So she has to, you know, take on the lizard animatronic by herself, which I think is so hilarious. But he dutifully comes back after his break is finished, and he's had his soda and played his round of pinball, and then he helps her destroy the lizard, and he ends up strangling it, pretty much, and then dragging it along with the attached rope behind him. And 2 other animatronics come up at him, but he takes them down with ease, without breaking a sweat, without batting an eye. But right then, the sheriff bursts into the room where Nick and Liv and the dragging lizard are, and she sees all the carnage and all the dead animatronics. Doesn't seem to care as much about the dead teenagers, but... And then she starts profusely apologizing to Willie the Weasel, or kind of whatever animatronics are left within earshot. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nick does not reflect the town. What he did does not reflect us. This is not our fault. And I guess on the ride over, she fearmongered and brainwashed the backup, because when she tells him to handcuff Nick, he does. Even though Nick is, like, perfectly innocent, and actually a victim here, even though he just doesn't act like it, doesn't care about that. And since everyone else from Liv's friend group is dead, the sheriff takes Liv, and Liv is the reason she came anyway. So the backup, the sheriff, and Liv all leave, of course, Liv against her will. They leave Nick handcuffed inside to a chair, and they lock him in once again, and this time the sheriff hopes that the animatronics get to him, and that the sacrifice gets completed. But I think they forgot they were dealing with Nick Cage. Because with his hands cuffed, he takes on the chameleon and the fairy one, and kind of gets a little tweaky, and he ends up crushing the fairy's head between his thighs and pops the head off. And then, like Superman himself, he rips the bindings from off his hands and goes and dispatches the chameleon, like he should have earlier. But no sweat was broken, and no eyelashes were bat. Outside Willie's Wonderland, the sheriff is in her truck, kind of staking out, hoping nothing else goes wrong, and that Nick gets killed and it becomes the sacrifice that the animatronics want. And Liv is taken by the backup officer, probably to go back to the station, except along the way, Tito Turtle, the Spanish-speaking turtle, attacks them, ends up killing the backup officer, and Liv kind of beats him up, but not fully. Regardless, she gets away and runs back to Willie's Wonderland. Back inside, Nick has managed to kill all the animatronics but one, and that's Willie the Weasel, the main man. Nick knows he's alive somewhere, but he doesn't go looking for him. He just goes back to cleaning. He goes back to his cleaning schedule, his cleaning regiment. Then he's just scrubbing and cleaning away like nothing happened. Even though this night has been the equivalent of hell. And then on his last break, as soon as that watch beeps, you know, he cracks open a can of soda, drinks that, guzzles it down, and then goes back to his pinball game. Except this is the last round, so he gets into it. He is feeling it. He gets into that game. He's like dancing and tweaking and whatever you want to call this. But then he ends up completing the pinball game. There you go. That was so important to him for some reason. And then guess what he does after that? He goes back to cleaning. He stuffs a bunch of the animatronic parts into trash bags and whatever else, and drags the kids that have been killed, the teenagers that have been killed, into the main room and just drapes tablecloths over them. And he manages to get out of the locked door, except he doesn't escape once he's broken the lock. Guess what he does? He takes the trash bags, probably full of animatronic parts, goes over to the main dumpster behind Willie's Wonderland, throws them out. He sees the sheriff, and he kind of stares at her, and then he waves. And then he heads back inside to finish off his task. He has every opportunity to run away and leave, but he is a man of his word. But fed up by his seemingly superhuman abilities, the sheriff gets pissed and pulls out her shotgun, and at shotgun point, she coerces him back inside, even though he was going back inside anyway, and kind of just offers him the Willie. Feed Willie, eat him, Willie, he's here! But in a very deserved twist of fate, Willie comes out of nowhere and slices the sheriff in half. And you know, with all the spurts of blood coming out of her chopped middle half. So now the sheriff is dead, and I guess she counted as one of the human sacrifices, or Willie is not even keeping score anymore, he's just pissed. And since Willie the Weasel is so offended and pissed and done with us all, he starts brawling with Nick. And he actually gets the upper hand on Nick for a while and scratches and gashes him up pretty good. Nick ends up falling to the ball pit, and I guess Willie assumes he's dead, so he goes on his animatronic way. Except, no, it's Nick Cage. He's not dead. It's Nick Cage. What is Willie thinking? So while Willie's elsewhere, Nick heads to the kitchen to make himself some makeshift weapons, including putting all his remaining sodas into a bag to make like a mace, is that what it's called? Or a soda sling? Kind of like a soap sock? And he makes another weapon as well and readies himself for battle, the final boss battle. So once Nick is all geared up, he heads back out into the main room to face off Willie. They do have a major face-off, a death battle. Guess who wins? Guess who wins, guys? Nick. Nick wins. He reigns triumphant. He comes out the conqueror. And there's like music playing and confetti falling in this final battle scene. And he ends up smashing Willie over and over again until Nick is just covered in his grease, I guess his blood. The animatronic grease, and then he rips Willie's head off. And Willie is now dead. At sunrise, Jed drives over Nick's completely fixed up car with the 4 working tires. He drives it up to the front parking lot of Willie's Wonderland, because both Jed and Tex McAdoo, are both fully anticipating Nick to be dead. Foolishly, of course, it's Nick Cage. So Tex was just planning on taking the car for himself. So they're both back at Willie's Wonderland, and Jed and Tex open the doors to see all the carnage inside, and maybe to see all the eviscerated guts of Nick Cage everywhere, like they're anticipating. But instead, they're met with a perfectly clean, pristine interior. Everything is set up, it looks beautiful, all good to go, like you could have a party right then and there. Nick delivered. From the second he stepped into those doors, he had a vision for how that place would turn out, and he was dedicated to it. Come hell or high water, or malevolent animatronic monsters. And then there's Nick, waiting inside, very much alive. Albeit with a few scratches and nicks. And needless to say, Tex and Jed are very shocked that 1, he's still alive, but 2, he entirely held up his end of the bargain, and this place is spotless. So, even though Tex is pretty evil, I guess he's also a man of his word, because seeing that Nick held up the end of his deal, he held up the end of his, and he hands Nick the car keys that he thought were going to be his. And of course, Nick doesn't say a word because, he's mute. But Tex and Jed are completely speechless. And Nick takes the keys from Tex and leaves without a word. At least they let him leave, right? At least they held up their end of the deal. And Liv is waiting outside, and she's also pretty surprised to see Nick alive. Maybe not as much as the other ones, because she saw how much of a badass Nick was in there. But Nick just gets in his car, with all the 4 new tires. Liv gets in the passenger seat, and they just drive off. And then Tex and Jed get in their own car, the old beat-up looking kind of trash car. That's why they wanted Nick's car, I guess. They're kind of shocked, surprised, impressed. And they're like, well, do you want to go get a beer? Except before they can take off, one of the animatronics, which happened to live, makes her way, it's the fairy one, whatever that is, the fairy gymnast one, makes her way out of the trash, and then makes their car explode, like sets their car alight and poof, I guess killing them, and herself. Maybe. But by this point, Nick and Liv are a ways off down the road, and silently speeding away. Nick pops open another soda, except this time he offers it to Liv. She takes it. I guess it's showing a token of his gratitude. I don't know where they're going, but I guess as far away as possible is the goal. But as they're speeding down the road, because, Nick is a speedster, Tito the turtle, who is apparently still alive, is limping his way down the road where Liv beat him up the night before. And Nick just presses down the gas, pedal to the metal, and poof, and rams him. And poof, there's pieces of Tito turtle everywhere. And subsequently, the last animatronic has officially been vanquished. Thank goodness. So thus concludes Willie's Wonderland. And this movie is so dumb, but in the best way possible. It's fun. It's lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek, I guess. Like, they're not taking themselves too seriously, okay? The actors, the writers, everyone involved, they know it's a dumb movie, okay? And they elbow into that. They're not acting like it's some high-class, highbrow Oscar winner, okay? It's made to be fun. And it was a fun movie, and I had fun watching it, okay? I'm sure you will too. And if you want to watch it, it's on Tubi. That's where I see a lot of these horrible horror movies. Although some of the reviews described it as trash. It's the type of trash you want to pick up and put in your pocket, and keep for later. Trash with sentimental value.